Begin a new Perek, the fourth Perek of Masechta Tainis, the last Perek of the Masechta. And like the other two Prakim, you have in the beginning of the Masechta all the Mishnayos of the Perek, and then the Gemara. Sagt Heilige Mishnah, Beshloishe, Prakim Beshana. There are 3 time periods of the year that Kainim, Neisen as Kapeyan, that the Kainim will duchen, will bench the Yidden. The literal translation of Neisen as Kapeyan is because when the Kainim bench Yidden, they lift up their hands. So there are 3 time periods of the year that they bench the Yidden, Arba Pamim Bayayim, 4 times in the day. B'Shachris, B'Musaf, B'Minche, U'B'Ne'ilas Sha'arim. These 3 tefillas of the day, which besides Shachris, Musaf, and Minche, also Ne'ilas Sha'arim, which is what we call Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur. And Rashi here brings 2 pshatim of what Ne'ilas Sha'arim means. Either it refers to the Sha'arim, the gates that are closed in the Beis HaMikdash at the end of the day when they finished Aveda, or it refers to the Ne'ilah of the gates in heaven, the gates of Shemayim that close towards the end of the day when there's the ending of the davening of the day. So
the same thing, they coincide or something?
Could be, but it's 2 different pshatim, which gates it refers to. So what are those 3 periods of the year? Betainiyos, when the Yidden would fast, all these fasts that we spoke about earlier in the Masechta, so they would also daven Ne'ilah, and they would do Berchas Kainim 4 times a day. Ma'amodos, as we'll see, the Mishnah will explain this, is beneged to those representatives of Klal Yisrael that would come and stand by the Karbanis. They would actually fast on those days that they would be there to represent the Yidden by the Karbanis. They would say special psukim and special davening, and they would also daven Ne'ilah. Seemingly, let's see, 1 second, we'll see in the Gemara. So they would also then have have Birchas Kainim. And also on Yom Kippur, when you daven Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, and Ne'ilah. So now the Mishnah will explain what these Maimodes are. Elohei Maimodes. So these are the Maimodes that come then to represent Klal Yisrael by the Karbanis. So the Gemara brings the Mishnah that is brings the source of what these Maimodes are. Fisha Nemar, it says in the pasuk regarding the carbon sibur, the carbon tamid. Tzav as b'nei Yisrael as karbani lachmi, that this is a mitzvah that all Yidden have. It's a carbon sibur to bring the carbon. So the question is, v'chia eich karbani shel adam karev v'hu eina oimid al gabav. How is a person's carbon brought if he's not there to stand on his carbon, to bring his carbon? And this is not only by a carbon sibur, this would be true even when you get a carbon yachid. You have to be there by your carbon, or at least send a shliach to your carbon. So if this is a carbon sibur, so how is it sibur there by the carbon? So therefore, Hiskinu Nevi'im Arishainim, the earlier Nevi'im, as Rashi brings from the Gemara, Shmuel and David HaMelech were Mesakin. Esrim Va'arba Mishmores, there are 24 groups that come to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So there's the 24 groups of Kainim this refers to, that do the Aveda. So Al Kol Mishmar or Mishmar, for each one of these groups of Kainim that do the Aveda in the Beis HaMikdash, Hayamaimed B'Yerushalayim, so there was also a group from Klal Yisrael that came to be there for the Karbanis. And this Maimed B'Yerushalayim was Shel Kainim, Shel Leviyim, and Shel Yisraelim. So the simple pshat of the Mishnah is it was made up of Kainim, Leviyim, and Yisraelim. So the Maimed of the people that are the representatives for Klal Yisrael, for the Karbanis, are not only Yisraelim, it's Kainim, Leviyim, and Yisraelim that were part of this Maimed, and they were also divided into 24 groups that would come, each one of them, a week at a time, to come to be the representatives of Klal Yisrael. Higiyaz mana mishmer lalois, when it came the time of that group, of that mishmer, to come to do their aveda, to come be there at the maimed. So then Kainim Leviyim Eilim, the Kainim go up and the Leviyim go up, and this refers to the Kainim that are doing their aveda, the Beis HaMikdash, in that week, and the Leviyim that were also divided into 24 groups, and they would also come do their aveda, which is to sing for the Karbanis, the Yerushalayim. They would go up to Yerushalayim. And there was also the Maimed of the Yidden that were in the city of Yerushalayim, and they would also go up to the Beis HaMikdash to be present there by the Karbanis that are brought for them. Now, but besides the Maimed that was there in Yerushalayim, the Mishnah says, V'Yisrael Shabba'isem Mishmar, the Yidden that were part of this group, even if they weren't in Yerushalayim, Miskansen le'oreim, or the other girsa here is Miskansen be'oreim, they would gather in whichever cities they were, even not in Yerushalayim, and they would read different things. V'kairin b'maisa bereishis, and they would read from the Torah from Maisa bereishis, as the Mishnah here will describe soon, what exactly they would read in the Torah on the day of their Maimed. So again, according to what it says here in the Mishnah, and Rashi explains this here, there were two different Maimodes. There was the Maimed of the Yidden that were in Yerushalayim. They would go up to Yerushalayim or to the place over there by the Beis HaMikdash to be there, the representatives of the Karbanis. But besides that, there was the Maimed in every city. If you belonged, if it was your week for your Maimed, in your city, the people of the Maimed would gather together to do the following things that the Mishnah will describe here. Now, Va'anshei HaMaimed, these people of the Maimed, they would fast 4 days of the week, from Monday until Thursday. But they would not fast on Erev Shabbos, Shabbos, for the honor of Shabbos, not to come into Shabbos completely hungry. And they would also not fast on Sunday either. So they shouldn't have to come from Shabbos where they eat and there's more pleasure and there's even more eating than regular, and to go from there straight into a fast day on Sunday, which is not easy. And v'yemusa, and you could die. So therefore, Sunday and Friday they would not fast, but Monday to Thursday, 4 days a week, for the Maimed, they would be fasting. And then going back to what the Mishnah said before, they would read from the Maisa Bereishis. So what does this mean? What would they read? Vayom Arishayin on Sunday, Bereishis, they would read from the first parsha of Bereishis until Vayerev Vayivayke Yom Echad, that's the first 5 psukim of the Torah. And then, but now, as Rashi explains, in order to read and to have 3 kruim, to have 3 aliyahs, Kayin, Levi, and Yisrael, you have to have at least 9 psukim. So the first psukim of the Torah is not going to be enough. So therefore, they would also add V'yihi Rakia. They would also read the following parsha of the second day of creation. So there's more. There should be enough psukim here. And then B'Sheni on the second day, similar. So they would start again from reading from the beginning of the second day, Yehi Rakia. But Yehi Rakia is not enough psukim. It's only a few psukim, 3 psukim. So they would read from Yehi Rakia V'Yikavu Amayim. They would also add from the third day of creation from Yikavu Amayim. And then B'Shlishi, similar on the third day. On Tuesday, Yikavu Amayim, they would read over again from Yikavu Amayim, and then they would also add from the following day, V'yihi Ma'iris. And the B'Revi on Wednesday, Yihi Ma'iris, they would read over again Yihi Ma'iris, and then V'yishirtzu Amayim from the following day. And B'Chamishi.
Revi's not one. Why is Revi Wednesday? But when you say Yom Rishon,
yeah.
even though they didn't fast, they
correct, they did not fast, but they still read from the Torah. Yeah. Okay. So B'Revi on Wednesday, Yihi Ma'iris v'yishutzu Amayim, and then B'Chamishi on Thursday, that is, they would read from Yishutzu Amayim, and then they would add from the next day's parsha V'Teitzei Haaretz, and then B'Shishi they would read from V'Teitzei Haaretz, and they would also add Vayichulu Hashamayim in order to complete the number of psukim necessary to have Kayin, Levi, and Yisrael to read from the Torah. Now the Mishnah explains, Parsha Gedayla, Parsha that had enough psukim that you could divide it into 2 aliyahs, Kayin Eisa B'Shnayim. So that was divided into 2 for Kayin and Levi. Va'Ketana, and the next Parsha, which had only a few psukim, 3 psukim, so then B'Yachid. That was only 1 aliyah for 1 person to read from it. When would they read this from the Torah from Maisa Bereishis? B'Shachris. They would read after Shachris, and b'Musaf, and also by Musaf time, they would read from the Torah again. U'b'Mincha, and then when they daven Mincha on this day, they would read this again, but then they would not read it from the Torah. Nichnasen v'kairen alpian. They would go in and they would read it, but alpian, with their mouth, in other words, balpeh, not from the inside. Kekairen as Shema, like we say the Shema when we read it every day, not from the Torah. Erev Shabbos b'Mincha. But on Shabbos, on a Friday afternoon, when you daven mincha, lo yoyu nechnasen, they would not go in to read from the Torah, and they would not do the regular maimed that they did every day. Mipnei kavod Shabbos, for the honor of Shabbos, that they could go and prepare for Shabbos. Another thing, kol yoyim sheyesh by halal. Any day that there was halal, so then aim by maimed. There was no maimed. So what day is this referring to when it says a day that there's halal, that there's no maimed? So Taisvus over here says that this refers to Chanukah. Okay, so we're talking over here on Chanukah where there's halal, there's no musaf, but there is a halal, and that's what we'll see soon. It's referring to musaf, but here it's referring to a day where there's no musaf, but there is halal, which is Chanukah. So then, because they're busy saying halal, so therefore they did not have to say the maimed, to read from the Torah from these psukim. B'shachris, that's by shachris. Kar b'musaf. a day that there's a carbon musif, Ein b'ne'ilah, so then they would not read these. They would not read these psukim by ne'ilah. They would not have the regular maimed by ne'ilah. So because there's a carbon musif, they would not have it not by ne'ilah and also not by mincha before that. Not by mincha and not by ne'ilah. Carbon eitzim, a day where they were busy with the carbon eitzim. So as we'll see soon in the Mishnah, it's going to explain Barichas, the carbon eitzim, when the Yidden came up to the second base of Mikdash and there wasn't enough wood for the karbanis, so different families donated carbon eitzim, and then it became a yearly thing that their families had their set dates when they would donate the eitzim for the base of Mikdash, even after there was enough wood, but there was special dates that they brought their carbon eitzim. So then, ein b'mincha. So then at mincha time, they would not have the maimed that they usually had on that day. Not mincha, but by ne'ilah, yes. Divrei Rav Akiva. This is what Rav Akiva says. Amalei Ben Azai. So Ben Azai said, Ka chaya Rabbi Yeshua shayne. Rabbi Yeshua said it in the reverse. Carbon musef, a day that there's a carbon musef. So then the people of the Maimed were more busy. Ein ben mincha, carbon eitzim. So again, ein ben mincha, that is. Ein ben mincha. So then by mincha time, they would not have the Maimed. But by ne'ilah they did. Carbon eitzim ein b'ne'ilah. But on the day that they had the carbon eitzim, they were actually even more busy than a day that they brought a carbon musif, and therefore, not only by mincha, but even ne'ilah time, they did not do the maimed. Okay, Rashi here says actually that when it came a day to bring the carbon musif, so then the Yidden were busy with helping out when they get to the musif. Rashi here says, "Hayutrudim lachtev eitzim v'lishev mayim." They were busy chopping wood and drawing water. So therefore, it pushed off the maimed of ne'ilah or the maimed of mincha. Okay, so that's the machlokes here. And what day were they more busy?
The same people of Maimed had to do all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
there was other work that they did there in the Beis Hamikdash. That's what it seems. Yeah. So again, the machlokes here is on what day were they more busy? Were they more busy on a day that there was a carbon musif and therefore it pushes off the maimed of mincha and ne'ilah? Or no, they were more busy on the day that they were bringing their carbon eitzim and then it pushes off their maimed of mincha and ne'ilah. So the Mishnah concludes, Chazer Rabbi Akiva li Yishayne ki Ben Azai. Rabbi Akiva retracted his opinion and he followed what Ben Azai said. Now the Mishnah comes back to explain what is this carbon eitzim. Zman atzik kayanim, the time that the eitzim was brought by the kayanim and v'ha'am, and not only from the kayanim, but b'chlal from Klal Yisrael, from people of the nation that brought eitzim. They had set dates when different families donated the wood. Tisha, there was 9 different dates. Okay, be'echad b'nissen, on a Chodesh Nisan was the first date of the year. B'nei Oirach ben Yehuda. The children of Oirach ben Yehuda, they were the ones that brought the carbon eitzim, again, the first time when they needed it, when they came up for the second base of Mikdash. So then that became their date, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So Bnei Oirach ben Yehuda bring up every year, they would have this celebration of the special carbon that they brought up for carbon eitzim. As we'll see in the Gemara, it was considered to be a ganze yomtiv. It was a whole yomtiv, this carbon eitzim that they brought that day. Then the next date was Be'esrim B'Tammuz, the 20th day of Tammuz, is Bnei David ben Yehuda, because the wood that was brought on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it lasted all the way to Chav Tammuz. So the next time was Chav Tammuz. And then B'Chamisha B'Av, on the 5th day of Av, was Bnei Parish ben Yehuda. So these are all different families from Shevet Yehuda. B'Shiva B'Ai, on the 7th day of Av, Bnei Yoinadav ben Rachav. Ba'asara B'Ai, on the 10th day of Av, Bnei Sana ben Binyamin, from Shevet Binyamin. B'Chamisha Asa B'Ai, the 15th day of Av, Bnei Zaitu ben Yehuda. And V'Imaim, and together with his family, Kainim or Leviim, there were also other Kainim and Leviim that brought wood, and V'chol Mishatah b'Shiftei. And there were different families that were unsure which Shevet they belonged to, and they were unsure when their time of bringing their carbon eitzim was, so they would join on that day. And also B'nei Gunvi Eli, these people that would steal the pestle, and B'nei Kaitzei Ktzias, and the ones that came from the Kaitzei Ktzias that they cut the figs, I think it refers to. Huh? Okay, Al Kopanim, the point is that we'll see who these families were. Described, everything is explained in the Gemara. Be'esrim B'Ai, then it comes the 20th day of Av, B'nei Pachas Moyav ben Yehuda. Be'esrim Be'elul, the 20th day of Elul, B'nei Adin ben Yehuda. Be'echad B'Tevis, on a Chodesh Tevis, Shabai B'nei Parush Shnia. This is the day of the carbon eitzim for B'nei Parush, that they donated wood a second time, because they were before already on Chamisha B'Av. The Echad B'Tevis Lehoya by Maimed. Now in the Shchedish Tevis, there was no Maimed for the Karbanis at all. Why not? Because this day there were a few different things that were going on that were very busy on this day. Shoya by Halal. On the Shchedish Tevis there's Halal because it's Chanukah, and also the Karban Musaf because it's Rosh Chodesh, so there's a Karban Musaf. And the Karban Eitzim, and also this day was a Karban Eitzim for this family. So therefore, there was no Maimed on this day because, on not even in Shachris, not at all, because it was so busy on this day.
They said Halal because of Rosh Chodesh also?
Well, Rosh Chodesh, you don't say the full Halal, so that's why I mentioned Chanukah. As Rashi here brings, Shahaya Rosh Chodesh, and then you look in the last Rashi in the page, it says Chanukah, because in the Chodesh, you're not really obligated to say full Halal, but it's Chanukah, so you say the full Halal. Sagt the Mishnah, Chamisha Dvarim Irus Aviseinu B'Shavasa B'Tammuz. There are 5 things that occurred to our forefathers on the 17th of Tammuz. And the Chamisha B'Tisha B'Av. And there are 5 things that occurred to them on Tisha B'Av. B'Shavasa B'Tammuz. What happened in Shavasa B'Tammuz? Nishtabru Aluchais. That's the day that Moshe Rabbeinu came down and saw the Chet HaEgel and the Luchas were broken. And also what happened is Ubutal Atomid, and the carbon Tomid that was brought in the Beis HaMikdash was annulled. There was a decree not to bring the carbon Tomid anymore. I believe this was in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. Okay? And also V'hufka Ir, the city of Yerushalayim was breached on this day after the siege was placed on the city from Asara B'Tevis, and this was the time in the second Beis HaMikdash when the wall of the city was breached. V'saraf Apustamus Asateira. And Apustamus also on the second Beis HaMikdash, he actually came from the Yevonim, so he burnt the Torah on this day. And also V'hemit Selim Beheichol, and Hemit Selim Beheichol actually refers, as Rashi here says, to Menashe, which was a king in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, and he placed that Selim into the Heichol. So those are the 5 things that happened on Shavasa B'Tammuz. V'Tisha B'Av, and then on Tisha B'Av, what were the 5 things that happened? Nigzar al Aviseinu Shlei Konsula Aretz. The decree on our forefathers in the Midbar not to enter into Eretz Yisrael by the Zed of the Meraglim was on this day. The Charav Abayis Barishayna, this is the day that the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the Bishniya, and in the second Beis HaMikdash. The Nilkada Beitar, and the city of Beitar that had many, many Yidden living there, millions of Yidden that were living in the city. This is the story of Bar Kochva, that was the king of the city, and this was a few years after the Churban Beis HaMikdash, actually, after the Churban Bayis Sheni, and they thought that Bar Kochva was going to be their Mashiach, and there was many Yidden there, and the city was conquered, and the Yidden were killed. And also the city of Yerushalayim was plowed. It was completely plowed to be like a field plowed. Those were the 5 things on Tisha B'Av. So the Mishnah Mishanichnas of, when the Chodesh Av comes in, Mimaten B'Simcha. You have to minimize from things that bring Simcha. There's the famous Chassidish Pshat that when Chodesh Av comes in, Mimaten, you minimize of the negativity of the month B'Simcha through serving the Eibishter B'Simcha. Shabbos Shechal Tisha B'Av, the week that Tisha B'Av comes out, Liyas B'Seicha, and this week, Asimel Saper, Umelachabes, you're not allowed to take a haircut, and you're not allowed to wash your clothing. Right, so you see over here, in the Mishnah and in Gemara, only the Shavua Shechal by Tisha B'Av is mentioned B'Feidish. From the beginning of the 9 days is not mentioned B'Feidish in the Gemara. I don't think so. We'll see. But the main stringency of the Avelus that there is in the week that Tisha B'Av falls out in it. But on Thursday, Mutaren, you're allowed to wash Vipnei Kavod Shabbos, for the honor of Shabbos. Erev Tisha B'Av, when it comes to Erev Tisha B'Av, and this refers to Erev Tisha B'Av in the afternoon when you eat the Suda that we call the Suda Mafsekes, the last food that you eat before the fast. Lo yochel adam shnei tafshilin, you should not eat 2 cooked foods, meat and fish, or Rashi brings, even if you have 2 things that are cooked together, like a fish with an egg that's cooked together with it, that's also considered to be shnei tafshilin, like it says in the Gemara and Arvei Psachim, regarding the shnei tafshilin that's brought by the Seder. Lo yochel basar, you should not eat then any meat. V'lo yishteh yayin, you shouldn't drink any wine. Rab Shimon Gamliel says, Yishana, you should change your habit in this meal, which will be explained in the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda Mechayev B'Kfiyas Hamita. Rabbi Yehuda says that you're obligated to turn your bed on its side and not sleep in your bed. However, Chachamim did not agree to this, that you shouldn't sleep in your bed. Rab Shimon Gamliel. Now Rab Shimon Gamliel said, Lehoyu Yomim Tovim LiYisrael. The Yidden did not have such great Yomim Tovim, Kachamisha Asa Ba'av, like the 15th day of Av, or Kiyayim HaKippurim, and like Yom Kippur. Shebehan, on these 2 days, B'nois Yerushalayim, the girls, the daughters of Yerushalayim, Yotzis B'Kli Lavan, they would go out with white garments. Shulin, and they were borrowed. Shalei levayesh es mishein lo, in order to not to embarrass someone that doesn't have. So everybody is borrowing from someone else. And the kolak kalim and all of these garments that they wore, because they were borrowing them from someone else, tu'un and tefillah, they would have to be toivel, because you don't know if these garments are tamei or not. You don't know if who you borrowed it from was a nidar or was tamei. They would go out into the vineyards and dance in the vineyards. And what would they say? Bacher, young lad, raise up your eyes and see what girl you choose for yourself to get married to. Don't pay attention to beauty. Pay attention to the family, to the yichus. Because it says in the pasuk, sheker achein vehevel hayofi, that the beauty is all falsehood, and the hevel hayofi, and the beauty is all in vain. Or the grace is false and the beauty is vain. Isha yiris Hashem hitasalo. A woman which is God-fearing, she is praiseworthy. And Vayim, the pasuk there says, Tnula mipriya dea v'yalua b'sha'arim ma'aseha, that what she does with her hands, and that's something that's praiseworthy. The pasuk says, Tzena re'ena b'noi Tzion, the daughters of Tzion go out, b'melech Shloimeh, the king of Shloimeh. So Rashi says this refers to the Eibishter, which the peace is the Eibishter's. Ba'atara shitra la'imai, and the crown that his mother has crowned him, the Eibishter, and this refers to Yidden, that Yidden crowned the Eibishter. What does this refer to? B'yayim chasunasai u'b'yayim simchas libay, the day of the chasana and the day of the Eibishter's joy. What is the day of the chasana? B'yayim chasunasai zeh matan Torah. This refers to matan Torah. But Rashi here says that we're bringing this over here as the pshat of our Mishnah, b'negei to the greatness of the day of Yom Kippur, and therefore Yom chasunasai refers to Yom Kippur, which is the day that the second set of luchos were given on this day. This refers to the day that the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt, to be rebuilt speedily in our days. That's what it says on Chamishas B'Av and Yom Kippur, v'shebehen yitzis v'cheles b'kramim. So fehlt sich nicht dasselbe Zman as okay. Sagt die Gemara, b'shleishe prakim b'shana. So it said in the Mishnah 3 time periods of the year. Kayanim naisim es kapayim chulum. So the Kayanim would go and bench the Yidden 4 times a day. So the Gemara asks, Tiny yisum amodais. Is this also true regarding the days that they fasted and the days of the Maimodais, that this would be 4 times a year? The question is, you could have Shachris, Mincha, and even Ne'ilah. They would add Ne'ilah on the day that they fasted or for the Maimodais. But Miyikim Musaf. Is there musaf on these days of the tiniest or by the Mamadais? So the Gemara answers, there's some words missing here in the Mishnah. This is how you have to read the Mishnah. There were 3 time periods in the year that the Kainim would bench the Yidden. And they would bench the Yidden every time they davened on those days. And v'yeshmehen arba pamim, and there are from these 3 time periods. Sometimes they would even bench Yidden 4 times a day. Bayayim shachris, musaf, mincha, neilis sharim. And ve'elei and shleisha prakim. These are the 3 time periods of the year. Tiny is amamadais, and then on the tiny amamadais there was no musaf, so they would bench Yidden only shachris, musaf. Shachris, mincha, and neilah 3 times a day. And then v'yom kippurim. On Yom Kippur it was 4 times a day because there was also musaf. What it said in our Mishnah follows the opinion of Rab Meir. However, Chachamim, regarding benching the Yidden, the Birchas Kainim, they say Shachris u'Musaf yeshbem nesiyas kapayim. By Shachris u'Musaf there's Birchas Kainim, but Mincha Ne'ilah ain't bem nesiyas kapayim. When it comes to Mincha Ne'ilah, you don't do Birchas Kainim anymore. Man Chachamim. So who is this opinion of the Chachamim? Rabbi Yehuda. This is Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa. Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Uneile, Kulan Yeshbem Nesiyas Kapayim. All these 4 times in the day when you daven, the Kainim will bench the Yidden. Divrei Rab Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says Shachris and Musaf Yeshbem Nesiyas Kapayim. Only Shachris and Musaf they bench the Yidden. But Mincha Neile Ein Bem Nesiyas Kapayim. For Mincha and Neile there is no Birchas Kainim. Rabbi Yaisi says Ne'ilah yashba nesiyas kapayim. For Ne'ilah there is Birchas Kainim, but Mincha ain't ba nesiyas kapayim. By Mincha there is no nesiyas kapayim. So we have 3 opinions over here. So the Gemara will now explain what these 3 opinions are. So what's the basis of their argument? Rab Meir says Kol Yoimeh Taime, my loy parsi kayane yadaya b'minchasa. Every day, what's the reason why the kayanim don't bench yidden for birchas kayanim by mincha time? So the reason is mishum shichros. It's because of shichros, because the yidden, the people that is, even the kayanim eat and they drink and they can get drunk. And when you're drunk, you're not allowed to do birchas kayanim. As Rashi brings over here, that birchas kayanim is compared to the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, just like the avodah can't be done after you drink wine. The same thing also with birchas kayanim. So ha'idna leke shikris. So if that's the whole issue, so that the day of a fast day, or the mamadais, or on Yom Kippur, where there is no shikris, no one's eating and drinking, so therefore there's no issue. So they can bench the Yidden 4 times a day, including Mincha and Eilah. That's Rav Meir's opinion. Rav Yudah says, Shachris u'Musaf, when it comes to Shachris u'Musaf, the Chol Yom Lo Yishchiach Shichros, since every day people don't eat and drink before Shachris u'Musaf, so there's no issue of Shichros. So like Gazri bu Rabbanan, there's no decree of the Rabbanan that it should not do Birchas Kainim then. Mincha and Eilah, however, when it comes to Mincha and Eilah in the afternoon, the Chol Yom Shchicha Shichros, on a regular day, this is the time of the day when people get drunk and eat already and drink already then. So therefore, Gazri bu Rabbanan will go that you should never do Birchas Kainim by Mincha and Eilah, not to confuse it with a regular day. They shouldn't come to do Birchas Kainim in a time when they already could be drunk. Rabbi Yossi says that this Gzeira is only for Mincha, but not for Ne'ilah. Why? Mincha, they say, since Mincha is what we daven also every day, so goes Rabbanan. Regarding this, Chachamim made a Gzeira not to do Birchas Kainim by Mincha. You might make a mistake and do Birchas Kainim on a regular day after you're drunk. Ne'ilah, the lesser B'chol Yaimeh, but because Ne'ilah, you don't have it on a regular day, you only do Ne'ilah on a fast day, or by the Mamadais, or on Yom Kippur, so like goes Rabbanan. For that, there was no Gzeira for the Rabbanan, so therefore there is Birchas Kainim for Ne'ilah. Till today, there are those that have the minik to do Birchas Kainim by Ne'ilah. Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav Halacha K'Rav Meir, that the Halacha is like Rav Meir. Rav Yechanan said, Nogu ha'om K'Rav Meir. The custom of the people is to follow Rav Meir's opinion. V'Rav Omar, and Rav said, Minig ke Rav Meir. There's a minig like Rav Meir. So the Gemara now explains what's the difference between these 3 different expressions here. The one that said that the halacha actually is like Rab Meir. What does this mean? Darshinan law bepirke. When you come and teach the halachas about this subject, so you're giving a shiur about this, you darshan and say that the halacha is like Rab Meir. Minig, one that says that there's a custom like Rab Meir. So he says, no, you don't darshan this way. Midrash loy darshina, you don't lechatchila come and say that the halacha is like Rab Meir. But ayruei meirinan, if someone will come to ask you about this, so you can tell him to do like Rab Meir, to do birchas kainim by all 4 tefillas of the day. And the one that says nagu, that it's a custom, ayruei loy meirinan. Even if someone asks, we don't paskin to say that you can do like Rab Meir. But v'avid, if it was done, it's done. And we don't make him go back. In other words, once it's done, it's already done. V'di'avid, you can do this way. Now this was all one opinion, that we go like Rab Meir. But Rav Nachman Amar, however, Rav Nachman said, halacha Rab Yossi, that we paskin like Rab Yossi, and the Gemara itself concludes, v'halacha ke Rab Yossi, that you do birchas kainim for Shachris, Musaf, and Ne'ilah. Sagt die Gemara, veha idne, so now my time, parsi kaine yadaya b'mincha de tanisa. Why now do we see that kainim do birchas kainim on a mincha by a fast day? Like even today, right? When we do the birchas kainim, the shliach tzibur says the birchas kainim by mincha on a fast day. What's the reason for this? So the answer is given the besamach l'shkiyas achame ka parsi, because since we daven mincha late in the day, by the time of shkiyah, so therefore, ketfilas ne'ilah damya. So therefore, it's similar to ne'ilah. So therefore, we do birchas kainim late in the day. Okay. The kula alma miyis. Now the Gemara says everybody, however, agrees there that shikir aser b'nesiyas kapayim. That a shikir is not allowed to do the birchas kainim. From where do we know this? Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi mishum bar kapara. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said in the name of bar kapara, the source is as follows: Lama nismecha parshas kayin mevarech la parshas nazir. Why in the Torah is the parsha of birchas kainim come right after the parsha of the nazir? Loimar, to tell you, ma nazir aser b'yayin, just like a nazir is not allowed to drink any wine. Av kayin mevarech aser b'yayin. So too the kayin, when he benches birchas kainim, he's also not allowed to drink any wine. Maskefla Avua de Rab Zayde. So the father of Rab Zayde asked the question. So if Rabbi Shia bar Zavda asked the question. So if so, if you're comparing it to a nazir, just like an asir is not allowed to even eat any seeds of the grapes, should that mean also that a kayin that's doing birchas kayinim should also not be allowed to even eat the seeds of grapes like a nazir? Rav Yitzchak says, that when he's benching the Eibishter, he's serving in the Beis HaMikdash. Just like a kain serving in the Beis HaMikdash is allowed to eat seeds of a grape. He's not allowed to drink wine to become drunk, but he's allowed to eat seeds of a grape. So to a kain that's doing birchas kainim is allowed to eat seeds of a grape. So now if you're comparing the kayin that's benching birchas kayinim to the kayin that serves in the Beis HaMikdash, so just like it comes to a kayin that's misharis, so balmum loy, if he's a balmum, he's not allowed to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So does that mean that af kayin mevarach balmum loy, that a kayin which is a balmum is also not allowed to do birchas kayinim? So the Gemara says no, ha-iskish le-nazir. For this we have the hekesh to nazir, to say that the qualification for the kayin is compared to a nazir, but not to the one that's serving in the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara says, "Umay chazis the makshus lekula." Why are you comparing to the nazir lekula to say that he's allowed to serve in the Beis Hamikdash even if he's a balmum? Akish l'chumre. Why don't you make the hekish to say l'chumre that I compare to the nazir that he should not be allowed to drink any wine and he should not be allowed to eat any seeds of the grapes, and then compare it to the kain that's serving in the Beis Hamikdash that even a balmum is not allowed to do birchas kainim? So the Gemara answers, asmachta ninu. This comparison is only an asmachta, that Chachamim relied on this comparison. It's not a real hekish, midrabanan, and therefore l'kula. We make the comparison only for the leniency and not for the stringency.